Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Wholeness Campaign Podcast.
Sponsored by Kirkland. Yeah, we have our first sponsor,
we are not
Kirkland
sponsored.
Organic
Oh
Kombucha.
my gosh.
Nah, I wish.
That'd be good. That'd be good. We should get a kombucha
Kirkland,
brand
if you're watching, you can sponsor us.
Costco for the win. Yeah. So Eric and Selena here, and we are going to talk about narcissism today.
Dum dum dum.
Dun dun dun. We very recently, as in yesterday, have kind of had some revelation about narcissism, and this really came from a counseling session we had with our marriage counselor, where he pointed out a certain person in our life operating in some covert narcissistic tendencies, which I'll explain that in a little bit, and also pointing it out, some of it in us.
Oh, yeah.
And things that we've been working on for a long time. So I want to talk about how narcissism connects to the healing process, because I think it's what I'm learning in the last 24 hours that I've been deeply thinking about this, which I truly have been. This is kind of like a big revelation for me. But narcissism, particularly the more covert type of narcissism, I feel is something that really keeps people sick. And there are a lot of things in the emotional health space that keep people sick. There's a lot of belief systems that keep people sick. Belief systems keep people from actually taking action on their health a lot of the times. There's so much to that. But I want to narrow in here on narcissism because, first of all, it's just something that's relevant to us right now. And I've spent today listening to tons of podcasts about it. And I want to kind of chat through what the difference between overt narcissism versus covert narcissism is, as explained by our counselor. And yeah, just kind of share a little bit of our experience with it, because we have struggled with it. And maybe you can see some similarities in yourself, and hopefully it can kind of give you some clarity, because I think some of these belief systems can really translate to our physical health, our emotional health, spiritual health. I mean, this idea really, really is all encompassing. So let's jump in. All right. So Eric, why don't you just start by kind of explaining what he described as the difference between overt and covert narcissism? Because we hear a lot in our culture that narcissism, the narcissism that we think of is typically the overt kind, the kind where the person just thinks they're better than everybody else. They're very demanding. They're very externally controlling.
Yeah.
Kind of explain the difference as you understood that.
Yeah. I think the way I understand it is the overt one is probably the one that most people can point out. Mm-hmm. It's more obvious. They're kind of more vocal about themselves being like the center of the universe, or maybe they talk about themselves all the time, the conversation. Mm-hmm. Everything's kind of about them. Right. You know what I mean? So it is way more obvious.
Yeah.
The covert one is tricky, and that was honestly something that I had never really thought of before.
Yeah.
But when our counselor broke it down yesterday, it was really eye-opening. So essentially, the covert one uses sympathy as the main way that they get attention, right, or their needs met, right, or the focus kind of being on them.
Yeah.
So it's the same outcome, Mm-hmm. It's the same outcome, but it's a different strategy, and it's more covert, I think, because it tugs on empathy and kind of
on your heartstrings.
Yeah, it tugs on your heartstrings a little bit. It's not as loud or flashy. It's more like, well, I've just been going through a really hard time. It's kind of like,
yeah,
Ye-
you are pulled to feel bad for them. And that's what I think it's a good differentiation here, because what somebody who is a covert narcissist really needs is empathy. That's what he was saying. But what it's pulling from people is sympathy. And actually,
yeah,
sympathy is kind of like the counterfeit of empathy. Empathy is really truly meeting somebody's compassion needs, meeting their emotional attunement needs, whereas sympathy is feeling bad for them, feeling pity for them.
yeah,
Oftentimes, this is why people will like give money off the side of the road to people who are homeless.
yeah,
There's like, it's a motive. This is just often, not all the time, but there's a motive where they just feel like they should do something to help, because the person, and it comes from this belief system that the person receiving it is powerless. And
mm,
so this is where actually there's always, it takes two to tango, right? There's always two people involved in any kind of narcissistic relationship, where you are actually, you viewing the person as powerless is actually your place to take ownership. That's something I've been processing in the last 24 hours, is like, it's easy to be like, oh, they were just manipulating me, or they were just doing this and they were causing all this chaos. But the truth is, I was participating in that by believing that this person was powerless to their circumstances, by um, by engaging in the pity, by believing there wasn't an answer to their issues, by all this type of stuff. So you're believing this, and it's actually quite negative. Typically, you're believing the lies that that person's actually trying to tell you. So it's two part. It's the person telling the lies and believing their own lies, but then it's you partnering with that, and in some senses becoming a crutch so that they are not able to ever actually grow and mature and get their needs met in a healthy way.
yeah,
So
yeah. And we've used this on each other
this is the funny part.
too.
And so
Like
this is part of why I got brought up in marriage counseling, is like,
yeah,
so much of the dynamic the last 2 years in counseling with this particular counselor who's been amazing is has been unraveling the subtle ways that we do that with each other.
yeah.
It's extremely subtle. Um, but
Or we'll
in the
like,
midst of an argument, really, we're taking things so personally
yeah.
and getting defensive about things.
Or a lot of times you'll shift between. So like we have
Yeah,
with each other shifted between the two, like because maybe you've learned the overt one is the way you get that need met,
right.
or you've learned that more covert sympathy kind of I'm a like it's kind of manipulating
It
and
is
like
manipulative. It's this
and a like
victim
hey have
mentality.
sympathy for me and then we've both done that for each other.
Right,
I'm kind of trying to think of an example like that where
right.
I've done it, or but I mean I think I could
Yeah.
actually think of one. An example, just kind of telling on myself, is like I don't know. I just drew a blank, but
He mentioned
it
the, like, when you were not feeling well, that season when you were not feeling well.
okay. Oh,
I
what did
don't
I
remember exactly why, but
do?
he
Can you think of an example for us, like
um
where?
that's a good question. Uh so like maybe being in an argument, some a person one person says how they're feeling. I feel like this happened like a million different ways, but says how they're feeling. I felt this when you did this. And instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry you felt that way, like being able to detach from the person, like the other person was so enmeshed in the person's reality, like couldn't detach from their emotional experience, felt like they were causing it, felt like they were getting blamed, that it would like the defenses would go up
Yeah,
essentially. And um it would be like, one of us would be like,
yeah,
well, when you said that hurt me, like the fact that you were even bringing it up, that type of that confrontation hurt me.
yeah,
So now the person's in the place that who's the person who is supposed to be responding to the emotional need of the other person is now the victim because the person even brought it up. And that's what it becomes with, if you don't expose this, it can become this like either the narcissist like elevates and the other person just learns to submit and submit and submit, and they stay quiet, or it brings so much disconnect because if the person's willing to stand up for themselves, then
that's a good example.
It's very painful over time.
Yeah, because I think what happened, I think this has probably happened to both of us.
Yeah,
I've done it to you,
100%.
But it's like, you come with a need to communicate a boundary or a need, and then all of a sudden you're the one trying to be powerful, coming to communicate, but then all of a sudden it becomes about them,
right?
And then next thing you know it, you're
giving compassion to
you're giving compassion to them,
which is really not compassion. It's not true compassion. It's sympathy.
Yeah,
you're sympathizing with the victim because you had to go through the confrontation that you just,
and then you
whatever it is.
Yeah, and you walk away, and all of a sudden you're like, kind of like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah,
like it kind of
like, where did my needs go and all of that.
So part of it is walking out of this. I think part of it is learning to listen, to like notice, like, because what happens, I think, is people get triggered in that situation,
right?
And they turn inward and they make it about themselves. So I think part of it is just practicing, like, well, if you're the one that struggles with this, it's practicing, like, when you notice that temptation to turn inward, to tell yourself, like, it's not about you, like, this other person's needs are valid, I'm gonna listen.
Like, if you can picture the little child inside of your body that's having an emotional moment in reaction to this person, just sitting there and telling that little kid, like, hey, you're okay, you're safe here. Oftentimes what's
or even learning to other
give
ways,
yourself compassion,
self-compassion,
so that you're not needing it in the moment where the person's also coming
or
with
learning
their
how
need.
to come with that need later.
Yeah, right. Because you can both come with the needs.
Yeah, instead of thinking this is the moment.
A powerful relationship would.
So a lot of it, honestly, is you need to learn to become powerful and communicate your needs. You can't just
depend on the other person.
Like, that person was powerful enough and brave enough to start the conversation, and you just hijacking their powerful moment to get your needs met, rather than you initiating a powerful moment. I think sometimes it's like you're scared to initiate your own moment, so you hijack the other person's moment.
It's so true.
So if you're the person whose your moment keeps getting hijacked, I think part of that is like learning to set boundaries. Like, if that person and we need to do this with each other, where it's like, if you're trying to bring your needs and they keep hijacking that, and rather than giving them the sympathy in that moment, you might need to pause and say, hey, I tried to come with you with this need. If you're not able to meet it, like, I'm going to respect that, but I'm going to go somewhere else. Like, not giving into the cycle,
right?
But like putting a boundary there.
Or like, I was in the middle of talking. I'm going to finish talking when you're ready to listen.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're ready to listen. That kind of stuff, which, guys, we're not good at this. We're like the last people you should learn from. But we are good at knowing some of this stuff.
We're learning.
We're learning some of this stuff on a head level.
Yeah, we're definitely not sharing this from a place of being experts.
Yeah.
We're just sharing this from a place of, this is what we're learning.
And this is where we'd like to go.
This is what we struggle with. And like, we're starting to learn, like, oh, this is the goal. Like, this is what we want to be like more.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit more about this idea of covert narcissism, because I think everybody knows the idea of the overt. It's pretty obvious. But what's interesting about the covert narcissism is it can go on really for generations, because it can become enmeshed with people's like personalities. People think that that's just that personality type, or it's just that type of person, or they're just a judgmental person, or it's just her, she's just trying to help. It's that she's being so helpful. She's that type of person, whatever. But the covert narcissism can really get passed down from generation to generation, because it's subtly abusive. And once you've experienced it, it's really easy to replicate. But what I find really interesting is the people in my life, and I've just been, the 24 hours I've been thinking about this, the people in my life I see having some of these covert narcissistic tendencies are also happen to be chronically sick. And now I'm not saying that that's causing it. I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg. I don't know. But I'm seeing this thing where people use even physical sickness to their advantage. And this is going to trigger some people, but some people use physical sickness to their advantage in order to gain that pity, which really they need that empathy and compassion, but they're getting this sympathy because it's feeding an emotional need that they haven't gotten met.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how to meet that need. And they've only learned this certain pattern of relating to people from their childhood. And so they don't really know how to break out of that. And their physical body is actually like mirroring their emotional experience. And that's like super controversial because you want to think like, I don't want to say it's the emotional experience is what's causing your sickness, because a lot of people would get really triggered by that. But all I'm saying is that mindset is a huge, huge, huge factor here. And the emotional piece, I mean, people talk about this online a lot as emotional regulation. I think that needs to be broken down a little bit further, because emotional regulation is one thing. I mean, like learning to physically, emotionally regulate with somebody is kind of a separate thing to really analyzing your belief systems, your tendencies, how you were treated, some of your trauma, and that stuff like carries into your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to kind of talk about this like covert idea. I wrote some notes here because my brain's just kind of like been going. But yeah, the question of can covert narcissism keep people sick? Covert narcissism is getting a need met from being the sick one, or identifying as the victim. So that's one thing. And I think you could all think of somebody in your life who identifies as the victim, whether or not it's through physical sickness or not. There tends to be a chronic need for sympathy, like we just said. Lots of excuses why they can't grow or change. I've seen this, we talked about poverty mentality in this last podcast, but there can be the financial excuse, there can be the circumstantial excuses, there can be the physical excuses. I can't exercise, so I can't get healthier. I can't do this because I can't get healthier. I don't live in the right climate, so I can't be in the sun. Those are like really surface level excuses, but think about, I can relate to this because I've had my own laundry list of excuses of why something couldn't happen, why I couldn't make a change.
Me too.
And it's
me too.
Like I'm like it's too hard. It's too radical of a change.
I got too much going on. I don't have the capacity.
Busy. I don't have that time to cook food that's healthy.
Sometimes it's true.
There's always some layer of truth in it.
But there are times where I know for sure I've said things like that, and I probably did have the capacity. I just didn't want to do the thing.
I mean, think about it. Then you've been in the conversation where a person keeps bringing up, oh, what if you tried this? Oh, what if you tried this? Oh, what if you tried this?
Yeah.
And you're just like beating it down. Well, I couldn't do that because of that. Well, I couldn't do that because of that.
You're kind of
I couldn't do that.
Like, shut up, stop helping me be powerful.
Right.
Because part of us in those moments, we want to stay powerless because that's when we get our need met. Because it's like, oh,
get the counterfeit need met, though.
It's like it's the counterfeit need, but it appears like a need. But it's like oh, woe is me, like, like that sympathy, that attention, it's a counterfeit attune. It could feel like attunement to them, but it's rooted in not really the truth about who you are.
Right.
It's rooted in your ailments,
Right.
or you not living up to the full potential, or you not stepping into the full authority and nature of who you're created to be.
Totally.
Very interesting, actually.
I know. I know a lot of excuses. There's a lot. And some people will subconsciously keep themselves in circumstances that have the best excuses for why they couldn't change for their health. Well, I feel called to this job, so I can't leave and make more money and help myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, like that place to go get support is so far away.
Or sometimes, honestly, I'm thinking about myself right now, the ways that I've done it, but you could like blame someone else in your life for the reason why you're stuck.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing this for you, so I can't do that. I'm busy, working and doing all this for you, so I don't have enough time to be powerful in this other area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of like, you're trying to checkmate the other person by like throwing, it's actually very,
It's actually
I've done this,
guys, it's
folks.
quite manipulative.
Yeah, it's,
Nobody wants to call it that, but it is.
yeah.
It's very subtle. And hey, we're owning it. Like, we operate in it. And what I found in my mind, sometimes the excuses will, like, I'll get confronted about something, and I think it's this insecurity of feeling like I don't know why, like I can't receive feedback or something like that. But I have noticed in certain situations with you, if you confront something with me, my mind afterwards, even if I'm not outwardly saying it, internally, I'm like, well, but this was the reason I did that, and this was the reason I did that, and this was the reason I did that, and I literally can't even hear your experience because I'm like,
you're just defending yourself.
defending myself, and sometimes I'm externally defending myself, but the internal experience is so much defense, and it's essentially what it is like chronic selfishness.
Yeah.
And if you tell that to somebody who's covertly narcissistic and not willing to own it, they will be like, well, that's just not, like, the real root of it is like, I really need compassion.
They'll just defend themselves.
It'll be a big deflection, which is kind of like my next thing is there's typically like a deflection. So, they desperately need empathy, but are stuck in a rut of demanding sympathy from typically everyone.
I think sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Say this. This connect to that. Like, usually people are quite lonely because the people around them don't actually enjoy that negativity. Yeah. So what we were just talking about.
Or they outcast themselves. So their identity is kind of rooted in being an outcast, different, they don't really fit in, kind of like, but that plays into the woe is me, I need sympathy. And it's like your needs are above.
And I just don't have help. I just don't have people.
So you kind of outcast yourself a little bit.
Nobody will cook for me. Yeah. It's that type of thing. And the reality is, there actually are opportunities around, but you can't see it because your mind has been trained to believe that you're stuck or you're alone.
What I was going to say, can I say something real fast?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think what this person needs too, and I'm definitely speaking to myself, is like what they actually need is to learn how to be powerful.
Yeah.
And what they need is like friends around them, or people around them that can set good boundaries for them to own and be powerful of their lives, instead of enabling them and playing into this dynamic that they're powerless and just coming to save them.
Yeah.
So like, I've needed that. I've done that. I've been on both sides of that for sure. And I think what we all need at the end of the day is to realize that, um, we're not victims,
Yeah.
really. And yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of having some of this
I know.
revelation even right now as we talk.
Right.
Oh, it's a
What
big
did he
topic.
say? He also said that what's interesting is people will surround themselves with what they are. So if you
Yeah.
actually struggle with covert narcissism, the odds are all your friends are covertly narcissistic because you will you will run away from the people who have boundaries. And so it takes a level of self-awareness to be like, "Oh shoot, everybody around me is feeding into these beliefs that I've been
Yeah.
projecting. Can How do I get out of this cycle, and how do I surround myself with people who are going to tell me the truth in love
Yeah.
and who are going to set loving boundaries so that I'm not able to manipulate them? Like, how do I get into a place where I'm not able to manipulate people out of me being powerful? And that requires some community that's really willing to be not like the nice community that you think of, but it's the honest, the truthful, the vulnerable people who are going to speak truth and
Yeah.
in love. Like, you're not asking for an overt narcissist, but you're asking for people who are going to tell you their legitimate experience of you. um
Yeah. I think this is hard. I
this
think
is
I
really
think the
hard.
truth is, if this is something you've operated in, um, I think it feels really scary to learn another way, a healthier way of getting your needs met.
Yeah.
I think what happens, and it's just my guess for a lot of us, is like that is what was modeled to you. Like for
Right.
me, my stepdad operated in a lot of overt and covert
Yeah.
narcissism. He probably learned that somehow. So you pick it up and you learn, this is how I get my needs met. And the truth of it too is it's not super vulnerable. So I
Right.
think the approach, it feels like you're getting that need met, but I think the reason why it's the counterfeit is it's not coming from a vulnerable place, and you can't really get your needs met if you're not vulnerable.
That's true.
Because
That's always true.
you need to be vulnerable to actually receive the thing, the
Yeah.
compassion, the empathy, and especially too if someone's giving you sympathy, I think there's a part of you that subconsciously knows like what I really need is like the sympathy. I think you know that they're playing into the belief that you're not powerful or you're a victim or there's
Yeah.
something wrong with you,
Right.
which is not true. So you know what I'm saying? How this
Right.
stuff, it's like, so
Totally.
I think I just want to acknowledge that like it can feel scary because the first step is probably going to be like you having to be powerful. You
Yeah.
having, what I mean by powerful is like actually being truthful, actually being vulnerable.
Vulnerable,
Um,
meaning like sharing the actual
yeah,
emotion, not
sharing,
just like
yes,
living in the
yes, yeah,
surface level
yeah,
emotions.
yeah,
Like, instead of just living in this place of, I'm really angry with that person's driving me
yeah.
crazy, being like, oh,
Or
that
maybe,
situation
yeah,
actually made me feel really
yeah,
scared. What's going on inside?
yeah. Instead of just being like, I can't do that, being like, I'm really scared to do that. I don't know if I'm capable. I'm
I don't know if
struggling.
I believe
I'm
it.
struggling
Yeah.
with, I feel, instead of just being like just like, I can't do that,
Yeah.
and then trying to get sympathy for that. I can't do it because I'm in such
Right.
a hard season and all this is going on, being like, I feel really incapable in this season. I'm really scared. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm
Right.
questioning all these things. And then that person, when you're honest, that person can actually speak into it and give compassion and speak life.
Which
Like,
is like,
hey, I know you're feeling incapable, but like, let me help you.
yeah.
Or them saying like, you are capable. Instead
Right.
of just being like, oh,
And so you're able to
you're
actually
right.
hear
You
the
can't do
truth.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. This is oh, guys.
It's crazy, man.
Guys, and like this could go for so many different areas of your health. You start identifying with one belief like, oh, I can't do that protocol because I don't do well with that food, or like I can't do that because I don't do well with this, or I tried this once and it didn't work, and so I'm done with that, or I can't make a lifestyle change because I'm too busy or too overwhelmed. I'm just too overwhelmed. And then you're like, oh, you're really overwhelmed. I'm so sorry. And then it's like, whoa, but that's not going to get you out of this situation. That's not going to help you
It's not
grow.
helpful in the long run. It kind of like, I think it appeases the temporary, like the pain that's coming up. Like, because what's happening is like that confrontation, that communication of needs is bringing up some of the pain. So instead of like coming face to face with the pain and kind of exposing it into the light, it kind of it appeases it. Like
Yeah.
makes you feel better in the moment, but it's still there.
Right.
It doesn't.
Well,
It's
and
not getting addressed.
it's interesting. He was talking about how it's a form of control. It's a form of getting people to do something for you. So, like, instead of, so a vulnerable, healthy conversation would be like, hey, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling scared. When you did that, that made me feel scared. And then the person responds and gets to choose how to powerfully respond and say, wow, I'm really sorry you're feeling scared. I could probably do this and change. But the covert narcissist demands a certain response. So it's demanding sympathy instead of leaving it up to the other person to choose how they love the person in response. So it would be like, you know, I'm really struggling with this. I really need, and like giving a specific thing. It's basically,
Hmm.
it's not leaving the other person with any real freedom. And if the other person's not used to feeling the freedom to love people however they have the capacity to love people, however they have the grace and peace to like engage with that person, they will feel the need to please the sympathy need, the powerless belief. They'll make that thing God
Hmm.
and serve it and spend their days serving that person's. You see it all the time, and I think of the like classic mother-in-law, not my mother-in-law, she's great, but like the classic mother-in-law scenario where like they're always kind of like chirping in the background. It's like with like essentially it's judgment, chirping in the background their opinions because they also don't know how to be direct, and they don't know
Yeah.
how to voice something, or they don't know how to manage their internal world, and they essentially are trying to control in a judgment. He was saying this is also a form of covert
Yeah.
narcissism where this like where
Comes
you're
out in these subtle.
he called it incest, like almost like a form of
Mesh.
enmeshment into things. So like if you're having you have a marriage relationship and the mother-in-law is kind of chiming in,
Yeah.
she's kind of trying to take the position of the wife,
Yeah. Yeah.
be really subtly kind of enmeshing herself in the relationship, or
Yeah.
um, like it's kind of a form of incest. Basically, the
I think
relationship in the
enmeshment is good.
past
Yeah.
has been, um, yeah, it's emotional. Like there's a whole book called
Yeah.
The Emotional Incest Syndrome, where like, yeah, if you don't learn to detach from your original family,
Yeah.
you can kind of build these relationships and these patterns of relating to them instead of their current family.
Yeah.
And um, whenever that happens, and there's just this chirping happening, and one of the spouses is yielding to that chirping,
Yeah.
um, it can be very painful
Yeah.
to live in, to
Yeah.
function in.
Because
It's really hard to function in that,
yeah,
and it's very subtle manipulation.
it disrupts the family unit because the reality is they're trying to, and yeah, this,
And
yeah,
it's
we're not talking about our,
no, we're
no, no,
not. We're not.
we're not talking about
But
our
it can be under the
family,
guise of.
but
I just want to finish. Like it's
yeah,
under the guise of I'm just trying to help,
yeah,
And so you feel sympathy again. You feel, oh, she's just trying to help. Oh,
Yeah.
like you're tempted with that sympathy instead of being
Yeah.
able to have a clear boundary.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Finish your thought. I just am going to get that out. But
No, it's good. No, I was just going to say, like, it just becomes sticky because I'm trying to think like how to explain this, but it's like they're trying to step in to the relationship like they carry as much authority,
right.
but the reality is they don't.
Right.
They're not in that family unit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're trying to carry the same level of authority, but they're not carrying the same level of responsibility.
Right.
Because whatever they're chiming into doesn't affect them at the end of the day.
Right.
Like they don't have to walk it out.
Mm-hmm.
They're not actually actively in that family unit on a daily basis. So what needs to happen is like one of the like if that was the parent of the wife, then the wife would probably have to set a boundary with their parents, or vice versa. The husband has to set the boundary with his parents, or it literally could be a family friend. It could be someone that's just in close contact with your family, and either one of you need to set the boundary and say, hey, we love you, we appreciate your advice, but these are some ways where it kind of feels like you've crossed a boundary and a line, and we just want to communicate that.
Yeah.
So
hold on 1 second.
Look at his face.
You can join the party for a second here.
Mine's still on?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
Welcome to Ben to the conversation.
Ben, welcome to the podcast. Yeah, welcome. Yeah. I just wanted to plug one thing. I felt like looking back on like who can I think of that like doesn't do this? Who's the opposite of the covert narcissist? And honestly, what kept coming to my mind was Becky Plotner, because she like refused, even to the very end, to identify with her sickness.
Yeah.
And I remember I emailed her one time saying like, I was praying for you. And I said something like, I'm praying for you. I hope you get better. And her response was something like I will. This is what God does. This is the type of healing he does. Yeah. Like she just was so dead on. She didn't want to receive any type of like I kind of gave a little sympathy because it was a circumstance that's challenging, but she just would not even receive it. And I think that's kind of how you be powerful when you're dealing with chronic illness for long periods of times. Like you really have to not grow a lack of tolerance for that sympathy.
Yeah.
And I thought
you have to learn that that's not what you need.
Yeah.
You don't want it. You reject it.
You don't even want it because you don't want to be that type of person.
Yeah.
So
that's good. It's really good example.
I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast.
Comment your thoughts, honestly.
Yeah.
We're not experts. We're new. We're fleshing this out with you guys.
Yes.
Comment your thoughts. Like, we would love to talk with you in the comment section.
Yeah. Yeah.
Share this with someone that you think
is a covert narcissist. No,
yeah.
Kidding.
Share this with the covert narcissist in your life. Just covertly share it with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be
tag them in the comments. No.
Yeah. No, but
right, dude. Right, dude.
Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to this channel if you got any value out of it. And we will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Peace out.
Peace out, Ben. Say peace out.
That was good.
That was awesome.